Hi everyone, it's 11 o'clock, so I will kickstart today's session. First of all, I would like to say welcome to our Younium webinar on the fascinating topic of mastering usage-based pricing, strategies for B2B SaaS success. My name is Linda and I'm the marketing coordinator here at Younium, and together with me I have Wolter, and he's our subject matter expert and main presenter for today's session. We have dedicated 50 minutes to this webinar and it's being recorded, so you can expect the recording in your inbox within a couple of days, together with the presentation materials, but also the exclusive template that is designed to assist you in developing your perfect pricing strategy. As mentioned, Wolter will lead the presentation and my colleague Hervoye will be managing the chat. So feel free to send in your questions and we will address them during the Q&A at the end of this session. I believe that's more or less it from me as for now, so I will hand it over to you, Wolter, to present the agenda for today.
Yeah, thanks so much. I should have probably shown this on screen already. This is us, look. But that's us. The agenda for today is we're going to talk a bit about like why we're having this webinar even. Then showing some pricing and packaging models that we commonly see in B2B SaaS. Then we're diving a bit more into the actual usage-based pricing. And one of the key things that bother a lot of people or stop a lot of people or delay rollouts of these plans is actually like, how do we report revenue? Because we'll get into that. And then of course, last but not least, we go through the actual templates that you will also have access to after this webinar directly. And we'll also walk through them together once, so we know how they work. Why are we hosting the webinar? I think it's hard to look at LinkedIn in SaaS communities or wherever you are, and there's not a topic about usage. It is a super massive trend, and over half of all SaaS companies expect to have some sort of usage-based pricing next year already. So it is growing very, very fast. But it's often also a bit mistaken as like, okay, this is the key to everything. We're going to go usage, and then we're going to grow and scale. And but yeah, let's talk about that. Because optimizing pricing and packaging is, of course, a key revenue driver. When things go a bit south in the economy, having the right pricing differentiates you from competition, and also just allows better upsell models and longer stickiness, and a lot of good things coming for that. So we're going to go through the pricing models that we commonly see and what kind of steps you take into get quality pricing for that. The first and most, I think, underestimated and most important one is segmentation. So how can you look at your existing prospect base, your ideal customer profile, and how can you kind of categorize those? What do they have in common, or how are they different? And based on that, there's so much to win already, because you have maybe like Younium, we look at, we have startup companies and we have enterprise companies. They have completely different needs from our product. They have completely different needs from our pricing. So, you need to understand that, because otherwise you have tough discussions. And also if you have, for instance, if you look at Younium again, there's customers that send out 10,000 invoices per week, and there's customers that have a super high average revenue per account that send 10 invoices per year. How do you cater for that if you have, for instance, a price per invoice? So it's like segmenting your customers, understanding how they are different and what makes them unique. Even if you have a small ICP, segmentation is super important. Then once you have categorized your certain customers, like you have, for instance, maybe certain technologies you sell to, or you have profit versus non-profit, we have like whatever kind of segmentation you come up with, you can kind of make an optimal pricing structure for those kind of companies. If you have the packaging, so like you have the plans that you want to sell, then you can also, okay, what price tag does this needs to be? How much value? How are they going to get return on investment from this price? And can we validate this in deals and in discussions with our customers? Then, of course, also not unimportant, how do we sell it? Is it self-explanatory pricing model, or do we need 5 solution architects in 2 different meetings explaining how the pricing model actually works? And also, what is our discounting strategy? So, if you have a super low ARPA, that's not usually something, then it works more with coupons and marketing campaigns and things like that. But if you really have like a bit of a higher subscription value, you need to have some sort of discounting strategy in place as well, so that sales know their mandate and they know where to go to if there's an exception or if the pricing needs to be different for a specific customer. Like, how do you deal with that? It's best to have that done before you launch the actual pricing model. Then it's implementation. It's the last step. It sounds so simple, but it's probably the most tricky of all. It's relatively easy for your new customers because they are not your customer yet. But if a customer has a current plan and suddenly they have to pay 20 euros more per month, as an example, they probably want to have some sort of explanation as to why that is. And how do you handle that over an entire customer base? How do you migrate thousands of customers? There's a lot of ways to do that. We have a lot of blogs about this actually as well, because especially software once was a kind of a license that you would just buy one time, and now we suddenly have to do some subscription fees. And you can imagine all those customers that bought that license and we're like, okay, now we're done, we don't have to pay. And then suddenly there's this account manager, yeah, by the way, that maintenance fee is going to be times 5. Sorry about that. There's a lot of strategies and lessons learned. So we got you covered there. So make sure you check out some of our blogs on this, but also ask questions you have practically right now at the end of the webinar. There's a lot of scenarios for that. Then you see a lot of pricing models. These are, I think, the most common ones we at least see in SaaS. You can imagine Younium is a company that meets many SaaS companies on a daily basis. And always one of the first questions we ask in sales teams is, what does your pricing look like? Because this kind of determines also how good we can help our customers. And I think number one is all you can eat. So you have one price, your solution costs X and everything is included. It would be nice if you have that, but it's a rare form, but it is still absolutely relevant and there for many solutions. Then you have more the functional package. So if you, for instance, have a lot of segments and you have the same product, but you kind of tweak it a bit for certain solutions, for certain industries, then you have functional packages. So, you have your product, but with a few tweaks, and then it gets sold to the construction companies, and then you have a few other tweaks and you sell it to electricity companies, and it's the same product, but there's small tweaks making it relevant for different kind of function segments within your prospect base. Then 3 is, I think, the most common one in B2B SaaS, where you have the good, better, best, or like starter, professional, and enterprise edition, right? That you have probably seen before. And then one has one key feature and a few add-ons, and the second has 3 key features, and the third has 5 key features or something like that. That's the most common one. And then you have mixed functional and platforms. That's kind of, you see that I think mainly in fintech, in financial platforms. So like Exact Online, PE accounting, where you have like, you buy the product, you buy the solution, the ERP for like a base fee, it's X per month, and then you have the specific niche version of that, which is an add-on that you put on top of that, like, okay, but for us it is logistics and distribution or something like that. And then it is the base fee plus the certain industry you're in. So a bit of a mix. And last but not least is kind of the configure your own. So you have all your features bundled in certain modules, and then you have your customers select like, okay, I want to have I want 1 and 5 because that is what I need. I don't need 2, 3, 4, and 6 or something. That could be the kind of configure your own. And we're kind of curious to see what you have. So I think my colleague Hervoya has a cool poll for you all to ask you which of these, if any, you have. It's up, I think. So let the voting begin. Oh. It's getting interesting. Super average. Cool. Think the voting is kind of done. So I don't know if you can see the results on the screen, so I'm just going to mention it anyway. So I think 6% has the all you can eat out of the audience today. 22% has the functional packages, which is number 2. And 22% also has the good, better, best. And actually the mixed functional is the most common one, which is kind of cool, because that is not the industry average is a bit different. That is good, better, best. I think is roughly 50%, and the mixed functional is closely behind that. But here in the audience, we have more of the mixed functional, and 17% has the configure your own. So super cool. Thank you so much for voting, everybody. Right. So then pricing metrics. So if you're then like you have your pricing or your packaging kind of figured out, so what goes in where, you have the pricing metric. So how do you price the solution yourself? And I think what we see a lot is the first, followed by the second, and then least, but is definitely most. Yeah, if you can get that, that will be fantastic, because it's easy to link to value. But you see a lot of user based, like you have a number of users, and then there's a flat fee, a platform fee, or something like that, and that includes 5 users. And then you have like the playing around with what is a user, right? Is it an active user, or is it a concurrent user? Is it a named user? And I think a lot of different things make sense for different companies. So if you, for instance, are an expense management software, right? So you want companies to, all users in the company you want them to have a login. But if you give them all like the same price, you can imagine maybe a person working in logistics, whatever, might not be as out eating with prospects or customers as maybe the salesperson. So the warehouse person, then the decision is, okay, let's not give the logistics person an account. But then if he needs to business travel, then suddenly he needs to do the expense claims in Excel, and then you can't harmonize the process. So that's where you see like structures like active users. So as soon as they expense claim something, you are an active user, and then you pay. And all the months you do nothing, then you don't pay. And then usually an active user is priced a bit higher than a normal named user, for instance. But also, speaking of expense claims, another thing could be usage based, right? Number of expense claims. You get 1,000 for your companies that you can do within a fixed fee, and everything above that is additional. So you see the usage based a lot in things that are easily quantized. Is that English? Probably. Number of API calls, number of gigabytes storage, number of transactions, something, anything that can actually be usage based. And again, there is a mix of like some part of that is within your subscription bundle, some part of that is in addition to your subscription bundle. And the most cool one is like if you can link it to direct success your customer will have with your solution. So if their revenue goes up, your subscription fee goes up. Because then you can also say like, yeah, but it will grow our subscription fee, but only if you grow. So it doesn't hurt you so much, right? Because that's a good thing if you grow. And if you grow because of us, it's an even better thing. So if you can link your value to a success the customer will have, it's probably the toughest to come up with, but it's it can be definitely possible. Same you see it with satisfaction up and customer satisfaction up, like eNPS and NPS kind of things. You see it in HR tech a bit with the satisfaction. So as soon as your eNPS goes up because of the tool, because it sends out these nice surveys, the subscription fee goes a bit up. But that means you have a happy employee base and they work harder, and typically that also impacts your revenue. And the same with customer satisfaction. Like if you can give the insights into your customer base because of a good NPS, then we charge you a bit more. But that is only after your customers are more happy and willing to pay more in upsell. So I think success-based is, always at least try to look at it. It's like, can this be relevant for us? Then why are we here today is to talk a bit more about the actual usage things. Typically usage is consumption based, so paid upon actually using something. Again, you have those mixes where there's partly in the bundle, partly outside the bundle, but some things are plain usage. So you have a fixed fee for your platform, you have a setup fee one-off, and then you have any consumption. If you do something, you pay for it. Often you see this being priced in kind of tier-based or volume-based agreements, or something also just simply a quantity. So it's €1 per X. I always said like sometimes it's fully in arrears, sometimes part of it is included in the actual bundle. And usually this is made by taking a subset of your existing pricing. So you have now pricing that is 500 euros per month or something like that. And you take part of that off. So it's going to be 400 euros. And with the usage, you have the potential to make it 150 euros extra. So you end up in 150. So last bullet also says you only apply usage-based pricing if you can actually grow your revenue, because you shouldn't just do this for the sake of a trend. And growing your revenue doesn't necessarily mean direct revenue impact because you price clever or more clever, but it can also be because of this price change, you are smarter than your competition, and then they choose you because their entry fee is lower, and then the usage they feel they can kind of have a control over, and then you outsmart your competitors. So that is also growing your revenue, but not directly linking to the actual monthly fee. I want to stop and think a bit about the psychology of usage. Because one thing that is super important is to do this exercise with your customers. So think of usage and then think of like, okay, you have your smartphone, right? At least I do have a smartphone. And then there's typically, I think we pay like a fixed fee, and then there's an X number of gigabyte I can download on data or something like that. And then there's X number of calling minutes and text messages and blah, blah, blah. So that's, I think, kind of the most common usage-based thing we see. Maybe it's electricity bills as well. So that is, I think, most people have come to learn to live with that kind of usage. But can you imagine Netflix on a usage-based pricing model? So let's say you Netflix, you currently pay, like, I think I pay in the Netherlands 13 euros or something like that. I don't know. But can you imagine they calling me and said, like, okay, now it's going to be 3 euros, but you're going to pay 10 cents, whatever, per series you watch, per episode, per movie, or something like that. And that transfers to usage. Because then my psychology, every time I will start a show, will think like, okay, but now I'm actually paying for this. I'm not saying it's bad, because there might be customers that think like, yeah, but I watch 2 movies every year, so for me it will be perfect because my Netflix cost will greatly decrease. Again, segmentation. It is super important to do segmentation because you have both of those people on this planet. And I'm curious about you. So my colleague Roy, I think, has another question. Would you buy Netflix on a usage kind of model for you? Yeah, I think you should see a poll right now. But this is super interesting. We're fighting around 50-50. I would really be a hardcore no, but I don't know why. I don't really watch that much Netflix. Love it. Super cool. Thanks so much for answering this. So it's not 50-50, but it's 52-48. So 52% of people said no, I would not like it, but 48 would say yes. And I think those 48 are very busy founders that do not really like, no, Netflix, not for me. But every now and then when I'm in the plane to an important customer, it is nice to watch one movie. Super cool to see. I would definitely be on the no. I don't think there's a good or bad, but it's really interesting. The point of this exercise is not so much to see our audience. It is, of course, fun, but really gauge this with your customers, with the segments that you're talking to. Like, yay, we're thinking about taking away part of your fixed subscription fee and putting this into a consumption-based model. So instead of all having access to all movies, you still get access, but you're only going to be charged when you actually use or watch a movie. Have that conversation. It's so important to have that conversation. And I know if you have 10,000 customers, you cannot have 10,000 conversations, but if you segment again, take a segment that is revenue. What are my highest paying customers? At least talk to 10 of those, and then a tier down, talk to 5 of those, and another tier down, talk to 3 of those. So you have kind of an understanding on what that will do. If you understand the psychology that goes on with your customers, because that determines if they're going to accept the pricing. It's there.
If I may just jump in, Herwe here, I'm managing the chat. So we have a really interesting comment in our chat that Rockstar Games are potentially looking at usage-based pricing model for their next blockbuster versus buying it once. So really interesting how that development also goes. And thank you so much for the comment.
Yeah, Rockstar Games, is that I praise myself as a gamer, but I think that is from Grand Theft Auto, but I'm not 100% sure. But yes, and you see it actually more and more, but also subscriptions, right? I mean, you used to have a game I went to a store and then I bought a game and I had this disc, and then I had like my cabinet here is still, you can't see it, but it's still full of all these games from the good old days. But now it is more, you have a lot of on subscription and you have a lot of usage, but I'm curious to see how they will pull it off. So thank you so much for sharing. We'll definitely keep an eye out for that. There's a few questions you should ask yourself when you're going to implement usage-based pricing. Can we track the usage? It's simple, right? But often companies realize that as soon as the customers are live. Can we track it? Can we actually see how much people they ran over with the car in Grand Theft Auto 6? I don't know. Can we actually track the usage? How do we migrate our existing customers, and how and when do we communicate that? Another thing, and that is probably the heavier one, maybe. Do our customers link the usage to value? So do they believe that as soon as I start to pay for something, that I get value out of it? Yeah, to give Netflix a point, I think I would get value out of my movie if it's a good movie. But what if it's a bad movie? That's less. I think you're more sure in the actual SaaS world. And what will be the impact on revenue, both long and short term? Because I think for most companies, it will be the case that the short-term impact is quite big on the negative side, because suddenly you take part of your revenue that would have come in as soon as the customer would have signed the paperwork, and you're kind of pushing that over the year to kind of trickle in. But after that year, it should be a bit higher if you did the pricing right. So that is something to think about. Like, it's not a bad thing and it's fine. Consider it an investment that it's going to be a bit tricky in the short term, but make sure you are aware of it. Make sure you're aware of what that will do to your cash flow, that you don't hire like 5 senior staff at that same time, because it's probably not smart to do that. Also, what is our competition doing? How are they pricing? And can we be slightly better by making a nuance? Because I mean, there's a lot of things like purchase to pay softwares are a lot of times priced the same way. Expense management software are priced the same way. Finance system, there's a lot of things that have some sort of overlap or look the same, because yeah, it's just market pricing and that's how the world is. But can we be slightly better by just making a small nuance in our pricing? Can we do something that other people haven't thought about? Always make sure that you at least, this should be on like the go-to-market thing for your pricing discussions, and like somebody needs to ask this question in the meeting and take a 30-minute silence and just think about that. It can be so important. Last but certainly not least, how do we handle commission? Because sales is usually rewarded on some kind of intake, like, you sign a deal that is valued at X, but then suddenly usage is not so much committed anymore, because it depends on how they use it. So have the conversation before, until some sales shows it's like, look at me, I have this beautiful signed quote. How am I getting paid? And then thinking about that is going to be a lot more tricky. So make sure you have answered that question in advance. We see many kind of scenarios again. So also reach out to us for advice if you feel that is needed. And last, but we wouldn't be Younium if we didn't bring this up, right? Can our back office also facilitate the actual invoicing processes of these? So if we can track the usage data, can we find a way that it also ends up on the actual invoice, along with the setup fee that we put there, along with the recurring fee that we put on there, any consulting or anything extra that needed to be on there? Can this usage just magically appear on that same invoice? That also would be super nice, because then you save a lot of hassle. And that is also something that is often considered to be a second step, and it's easier to have that done from the beginning. Revenue. Another thing is the downside of like usage is, again, it's not so predictable, because suddenly, instead of people paying annually in advance a certain volume of a subscription fee, suddenly they can use it whenever they want, and it can be seasonal driven, it can be a lot of things. It's not so super predictable anymore. So how can we do that? So there's a few metrics to look at. FMRR is forecasted monthly recurring revenue. That is coming from your usage-based components in your pricing. And you have EMR on the right, which is estimated recurring revenue. And then estimated monthly recurring revenue is kind of your contracted monthly recurring revenue and forecasted monthly recurring revenue. So customer estimates they're going to use 2,000 pieces per month. It is not a commitment. It is just a number your customer can tell you. And it's good to have that conversation, because then you also know where they're at in terms of value. So if you sign a new deal and they're talking about this, tell the customer, like, it's not a commitment. We need kind of an estimation for us. And kind of if you have that forecasted monthly recurring revenue together with the contracted coming from the actual recurring subscription fees that are always going to be there, you bring it to an estimated monthly recurring revenue. And that is kind of the booking-based equivalent of CMR, but it includes the forecasted revenue. And then you see like the booking that is triggered from this in a subscription management system is those two together. And then you have the subscription that actually generates the monthly recurring revenue coming from the subscription recurring fees. And you have the usage MRR that is going to come as soon as the kind of usage is used. And then revenue recognition can happen at the invoice, or if you're super fancy, at the moment of subscription as well. Then if you want to forecast a bit more, one other key ingredient that helps is historic data. You don't have that on day one, so it's just not possible. But you will pick up trends in the actual usage. So, you will see peaks. You will see after a year of using, you see, okay, March is heavy on usage, June is heavy on usage. Why is that? And can we do that in packaging and pricing? Because review it is another step in setting up your pricing. Like if you will get those trends, you will see that, and you will see like based on seasons, based on things that happen in a year. So for instance, for us, our indexation feature is mostly used in January, right? If we would make that a usage-based thing, it would be super boring in February to December. And then in January, suddenly everybody would use it. Because indexation is, for many companies, used in the beginning of the year. So historic data will help you forecast your usage revenue. So if you combine kind of the trends you see from, for instance, Younium, you will see like, okay, based on the committed contract you will have, there's usage historically that will roughly look like this. Combining that with the EMR, you have a very good understanding of what your revenue will look like. Because the downside of like, we finally managed that transition from like licenses to subscription services. So we have predictability in our revenue, and then we go to usage and kill that again. So these are kind of ways that you can still predict your revenue. Super important. That's mostly it, I think, for the content portion, but we are going to leave you with the templates. And I already said we're going to quickly go through them. And the templates is kind of, this cool document that our designer Milan did a great job of. And it helps you kind of segment your features. So it kind of assumes that you have a list of like, these are the 100 things that we do. It can be a spreadsheet, can be whatever. And you can kind of play with them in like, okay, how would that look in the all-you-can-eat? If you would have the 100 features here, what would it then cost? Or in the good, better, best, what kind of things do need to belong here? And to actually help you segment those to those specific categories or price plans or whatever you want to call them, we include this as well, which is the leader, filler, killer analysis. Difficult word for me. If you picture your 100 features that you have, right? There's a few features that are the things that people come to you for. This is why I come to you, to do my expense claims and automate that. That is one thing. Or to automate my inbound process invoices in the purchase to pay or whatever. There are certain things you go for. And often when this model is explained, the leader, filler, killer analysis is, think of the fast food restaurant. Go to McDonald's. People don't typically go to McDonald's for the French fries. They go for a burger or to Burger King or wherever. Like they go to the burger. Like I want to have a Big Mac. It's one of the burgers here. I think it might be different names in different countries. So I'm going for that burger. I'm going to the restaurant. So identify what those things are that make them come to you. And then what you want to do is you don't want to have people go home hungry. So you want to fill up that order, right? You want to fill it up with some extra things. So like, okay, what should we add to that? So maybe some French fries is a nice filler. And then there's some like add-ons. Okay, some things people might like, but not everybody wants. And so it shouldn't be in every package. Because then we have to explain in sales negotiations, like, okay, yeah, but it's included in the service. Yeah, but I'm not going to use it, so I don't want to pay for it. That is typically an add-on. Or even more so, if it's a super fancy one, it's a premium one, like what is it, like a milkshake or McChicken nuggets, or what are those things called? And last but not least, there's the killers. Killers people would expect you to have in your platform, but you shouldn't charge for it, like a napkin. or cutlery. Like, you can in a McDonald's, you would expect to have a napkin to wipe your mouth, but as soon as like, yeah, that will be €1.50, please, for that napkin. It's like, what? Why am I paying for this? It's just like, I throw it away. I don't want to pay for it. That's a killer feature. So we will publish this on a place where there's an explanation about this file as well. I, of course, now just gave you a brief explanation, but it will help you a bit more on how to map this. So take your 100 features, give them a number, and try to plot them. Okay, this is a leader feature. This is a filler feature. This is a killer feature. And I know, for instance, in SaaS, you see a lot of jokes around single sign-on. Is that a killer or is that a filler? Depending on who you sell to and how you segment, it might be for some prospects, it might be a leader. For some, it might be an absolute killer. So, if again, segmentation is super important to start before you run this exercise. But this is a super cool kind of chart to map your pricing and packaging to. And especially if you have a good, better, best kind of pricing packaging, then you take like one leader in all three, and then the second one is maybe 2, and the third one is maybe 3 leaders, something like that, to explain the value of why customers pay more. And I think with good, better, best, it is often the trick to make the better, the middle one, the most attractive one. So you have very little on the small, very high on the medium, and the super high is only for like the enterprise companies, and then it's super cool that you sign those as well. So that is kind of how this model works. And then I am stopping to talk. And oh, wow, it's dark now. Sorry. Let me shine the light here. And no, it doesn't work. I'm still here. Are there questions?
Yeah, I mean, your burger talk made most of us hungry, I guess. But before it's lunch break, we already received a bunch of questions. I will first, before I deep dive into those, take just 1 minute to introduce Younium. So for those who never heard of us, we are an all-in-one subscription management and billing tool founded in 2017. We focus on advanced B2B SaaS companies that run a recurring revenue business model. And our goal then is to help them streamline their processes and gain control over subscriptions. And we have offices in Sweden, the Netherlands, Poland, and the United States. So if you would like to know more about Younium and explore how our solution can be a game changer for your business, you can reach out to me, Wolter Rebergen, or anyone in the company. So I will jump over to the Q&A part now, if you're ready, Wolter.
Yeah, sure.
Let me have a look.
Are they easy questions?
Let's see.
Okay.
I start with the first one. So do you have an example of commission structures when transferring to usage pricing?
Yes. I think what most companies actually do is kind of have a start and a kickback. So it's kind of the same as what you want when you establish usage pricing. We talked about you take a small portion of the fixed fee and then make it higher rewardable, but spread over time. So, the usage should actually come back as 150% as from what it would have been if it was part of the recurring fee. And you kind of do the same trick with commission. So you give commission on the signing date based on the recurring fees, and you retroactively give commission based on the actual usage of that. And that's another fixed percentage. And why is that cool? It doesn't really make salespeople happy on day one, but after a year, they see, oh, this actually gives me more money. And it also incentivizes your sales and customer success teams to also look more closely at like, how can we make our customers successful? And how is this ICP? Because sales used to be only rewarded for just signing the deal. And if the ICP fit was bad, customer success issue, not mine. Because I have my commission, I'm out on the beach here in Brazil, and I make living. I'm happy. But by doing that, you also put more responsibility on your sales teams, because you really make them accountable for the quality of customers and make sure that they actually use your solution. But more importantly, also your customer success teams. And they're also heavily incentivized in commission-based structures on usage, because they're the ones driving the success of your customers. And the more they are aware of how the platform is used and drives value to them, the more your customer uses, the more revenue you have, and the more they should be rewarded for it. So I think the delay in commission in an equal split as, if you would take 20% of the revenue that you would have gotten from the normal subscription to kind of get that into a usage base, you would also do the same with the commission. Like take away 20%, push that to the end and make it higher rewardable. That's the most common one I've seen, at least, and the one I would like.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So I have a bit questions in both the webinar chat and the Q&A. So as pricing structures are becoming increasingly complex, how should people build their pricing pages? Is there any way to simplify it for visitors without having to hide the price?
Oh, wow. That's tricky. It is definitely true. So I think, if you could get the model to work in one of those 5 models we've shown, it is already a bit simpler, but it is, you will have your add-ons, you will have your premium fillers and your killers and all those things. So it's always going to be kind of a long page, but I think, if you can get it down to at least 2 transparent models, so if you would work, for instance, with the good and better best model, if you could get your good and better in a way that it's kind of packaged and done, and then only for the best have kind of like a call list kind of thing, I mean, that is also fine, because typically what you see is the good and better are maybe things that customers would buy online without talking to sales, right? It is whatever, 50 euros a month. I don't need to negotiate that down, or yeah, I would love to, but I maybe can't. I would also like to negotiate my Netflix subscription down, but I don't think the CEO will answer my call. So I think it is fine if you can kind of package the standard bundles, the most like lower revenue per account deals, in a way that they can be bought on the website. That is fine. And then if you have like the more expensive cases call you, then it's also fine to make a bit more customer acquisition costs for it, because I don't think it's going to be possible, maybe depending on your business. Again, if you can link it to usage, then it's going to be easier. Like if you would have number of gigabytes included is 10, and above that is €1 per gigabyte, and this is the subscription fee, then it's always going to be a short line on your website. But for a lot of companies, I know there's a lot of variables, but I would really encourage you, like, like Linda said, connect with me on LinkedIn and we'll have a chat, and then can look a bit deeper into your specific case. But I don't know. I'm optimistic. Way too long answer.
Okay, then jumping directly on to the next one. What about term? For example, do you co-term your deals with your clients' existing subscriptions?
Ideally, yes. Ideally, yes. I think at Younium, we use Younium, so we're also a bit lucky in terms of how that works in the administration part of things. But I think having the fixed renewal talks, it also kind of depends. Like, you have, for instance, HubSpot. HubSpot has, for instance, they have a marketing kind of solution and they have a sales kind of solution, if we make it very black and white. And I can imagine it might make sense to not co-term it, because, some chats needs to be with the VP of marketing and some chats needs to be with VP sales, as an example. Then it doesn't really matter so much when the general term is. But the more you can harmonize it into having like a successful business QBR, sales and marketing are not everywhere perfectly aligned as well. So, getting them both on the table and like discuss how does the complete solution work for you? Where do you lack? How is an MQL become an SQL? And if you can co-term it, it makes the business review meetings super more efficient, and it makes the value cross-functionally in their departments probably also a bit more efficient. So it gets them to speak. I think it's the best to do it, but maybe there's exceptions.
Cool. And I guess this is from a customer. Any plans for improving the price adjustment on tier-based usage charges?
On tier-based usage charges?
Any plans for improving the price adjustment on tier-based usage charges?
I don't really know what I'm quite optimistic about the existing one, but maybe a specific case. Again, call me, because I think it's quite good, but I don't know what kind of thing you're specifically looking at. If it's like the indexation feature based on the actual usage agrees, that can be something, yeah.
We can also get back with more information in an email.
Exactly.
We do so. And then I have some more questions. Do you have any advice as to how to perform segmentation in your prospect base?
Yeah, for what we do is we have it easy, right? You would say like, oh, Younium, they only sell to B2B software SaaS companies. So you would say that's the segmentation, but it's really not, because then you have you have startup companies, you have enterprise companies that carry like 25 years of software legacy deals. So that's the segmentation. For a lot of companies, it might be a bit I don't know, easier, but like different. Some companies sell like, okay, our industry is non-profit, and then you have like, we sell to education, we sell to government, and you know, that can be segmentations. But the most important, if you can segment it in a way like, who would pay for this and why, and how can we show them the value, and how are they different is more of a question, and how are they the same is also a question. Like, ask those two questions. And for us, what we do is like data. We just get data in our CRM system. Like, okay, are they in ed tech? Are they in health tech, in fintech, in HR tech? And then based on that, we can also run targeted marketing. Like, you know, other customers in HR tech have used Younium like this. That can be a segmentation. There can be many options for that. But again, I would love to spar with you on your specific needs, and then let's have a look.
Sounds good. And I have one last question, if nothing else is popping up during the answer. Does Younium support the entry of usage data to be included in billing? And if so, can it be on the same subscription as a setup fee and subscription fee would be?
Yeah. Yes. Super cool answer. Yes. No, you can have the multiple options. You can have like, okay, 20 users are fixed included. Overusage needs to be charged, and overusage needs to be charged in tiers. Yeah. Yes. And we have API endpoints to automatically link that to your own SaaS product. So as soon as people start expense claiming, Younium will know, and they will say, hey, Linda had access to 20 expense claims, but she did 25. So we need to invoice her for those extra 5. So Younium can automate that. And for those who don't have the API endpoints ready for that in their SaaS application, we can work with CSV imports. So you can kind of run an extract of your own SaaS company and import that via CSV file, which is like an old-fashioned Excel version, and import that into Younium. So there's 2 options. Or there's manual entry if you have nothing to do, of course.
Nice. Thank you.
Yeah,
I also
my
got
pleasure.
a question about the recording. Yes, we will send out the recording within 2 days with the presentation material and the template as well. So that is definitely going to happen as soon as possible. And if no one has any other questions, I will also drop the link to the template in the chat. But otherwise, you will also receive it in the email. So I will just say thank you to everyone for today's session. I had super much fun. I learned something new. So it's always nice.
Thank you so much.
Revoje, you want to say thank you?
Yeah, why not? Thank you all, Tak, yes, and dankjewel. I think that I picked up that one in Dutch as well. And thanks for really cool engagements in the chat box. It was super lovely to see all of you.
Super nice.
Have a nice day. And of course, nice lunch. I'm up for that burger now.
Yes, time for the big one. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.